Do you mind, sister? This is occupado.
Well, after the original Psycho came out in 1960, Anthony Perkins turned down all kinds of offers for a sequel for more than 20 years. And, of course, you couldn't have a sequel without Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates. Then 2 years ago, Perkins agreed to make Psycho 2, which was an okay movie on its own terms, although, of course, it wasn't any comparison to Hitchcock's classic. Now comes Psycho 3, this time directed by Anthony Perkins, as well as starring him. And this is a much better movie than Part 2. In fact, if you love the original Psycho, you might want to see this one because this movie is especially interesting in the way it reveals some of the secrets of Norman Bates' obsessive relationship with what remains of his mother. Here's the scene from early in the film.
Well, I'm the manager, and you'd be my assistant, so I guess you'd be assistant manager. You'd get a free room, of course, and work mostly days. I prefer the nights.
Well, I gotta be straight with you, Norm.
Norman.
I'm not looking for anything long-term. I just want to make enough bucks to get the brakes on my car fixed and build up a little stake for L.A. I'm a singer. But I wouldn't mind filling in until you found somebody permanent. I just won't be staying around too long.
No one ever does.
Another visitor to Bates Motel country is a woman journalist who's doing a story on mental patients who have returned to the community, and she wants to get Norman Bates' story.
Revenge. Aren't you the least bitter about what Lila Loomis tried to do to you?
I understand. My cure couldn't cure the hurt I caused. My return to sanity didn't return the dead. There's no way to make up that loss. The past is never really past. It stays with me all the time. And no matter how hard I try, I can't really escape. It's always there, throbbing inside you, coloring your perceptions of the world and sometimes controlling them.
Norman Bates does kill again in Psycho 3, but the local sheriff remains one of his main supporters, even in this macabre scene.
Still no reason to get so riled up and go running off like that. Well, we'll leave you alone now. Again, I'm sorry.
That's not good enough, Sheriff. You just can't let it lie.
I've had enough of this Nancy Drew horse shit from you. I'm letting it lie, and so are you understand? Until I have evidence to the contrary, that young lady and Mrs. Spool are both missing persons cases.
Aren't you going to take him in for questioning or anything? Why don't you drag the swamp? That's where he dumped the last bodies.
Don't tell me my job, Miss Venable.
Well, somebody has to. You're not going to let him go.
Despite all your glib insinuations, I don't have one iota of proof that he's done anything.
I love that moment when he puts the bloodstained ice cube in his mouth and Perkins goes. In fact, Perkins does things with his mouth and eyes better than any other actor in the history of horror films, I think. The key to Psycho 3 is, of course, Norman Bates, Anthony Perkins. And in his first directing effort, Perkins shows that he knows Norman better than anyone else. He doesn't make the movie a freak show, but instead he develops some sympathy for Norman in a perverse way. Here's a man that's driven by demons that we can only imagine and uncertain of his connections with the real world. By this point, Hitchcock's original Psycho has become such an official classic that any movie named Psycho 3 is going to be routinely criticized in comparison with the Hitchcock film. All I have to say is no matter what you call this movie, Anthony Perkins has made a very good, very scary horror film, and it seems like the one with the ice chest there, one that's very much in the Hitchcock spirit. I liked it.
That's a cute scene. I didn't get scared by the film. I was turned off by some of the violence, and I won't, of course you're not saying it compares with the original. It just sort of laid there for me. I didn't think it was bad. I just didn't care to see it. It didn't interest me. We've talked before about how in some classic movies we don't want to know how the secrets are revealed. That didn't hold any interest for me. Obviously, the speech he makes in the restaurant there about the past guiding one's present and future is obvious. And so the film just sort of sat there, and I ended up just being bored.
Well, if the violence was too much for you, what did you think about the shower scene in the original Psycho? Was that too much for you, too?
No, it wasn't too much for me. That was one of the most shocking things and original things I'd ever seen before.
Well, there's a scene in this movie where somebody gets her neck cut that is just as shocking and in the same way. And I also felt
but I don't
in
think
context,
it
not like Friday the 13th, where they're just throwing it in by the shovelful, but within context and with the character. And there's another scene in this movie.
Yeah, but it's not a classic scene. That scene will not be recalled 20 years from now. 20 years from now.
Okay, 20 years from now, no movies this year are going to be recalled for their classic scenes, probably. We're talking about a scene that stands all by itself, so that's not a valid criticism. Another thing about the movie,
you just asked me if it was a good scene.
I asked you what you said about the violence, and you said the violence was okay in one but not in the other.
That's right.
Is, if it shocked you in one and didn't shock you in the other, then...
No, obviously there can be violent films where you accept the violence. For example, Halloween is an extremely violent film that I thought was very well done. Psycho was another. This film was not. And there are tons of films that you've routinely disliked that have a lot of violence.
Yeah, but none of them have been quite this well directed, and I think the directing and acting is the whole thing when it comes to violence. There's another scene in this movie where Norman gets a note, presumably from his mother, saying, "Meet me in cabin number 12." And there's a long traveling shot as he walks the whole distance to that room with the camera showing in his eyes and on his mouth and in his face such a play of emotions that it's absolutely fascinating. I think this is a much better movie than you're giving it credit for.
Well, there's no question that you think it so, and I disagree.
I didn't do anything with her. She's a nice girl.
She's a whore.
But we didn't do anything.
You let her come between us.